SP knows you are God. So make them pray to you. I am Neil Larthos. I am the next Abdullah. You are the next Neville Goddard. And welcome to my channel. So today we are talking about how your God state and understanding your true nature is extremely important when manifesting a specific person, or really anything. Wealth, a career, etc., etc. So how do you tap into this God state? Well, if you're new to law of assumption, I'll keep it brief. And I'll give you what all that you need to know right here. You are God. What do I mean? No, I don't mean that you created Noah's Ark and all the angels. What I mean is you are the God of your reality. You are not the human being who is a fan of the Los Angeles Dodgers and who eats Klondike bars and who likes to go to Chick-fil-A. You are simply the observer of the human being that likes Klondike bars and eats Chick-fil-A every day. You are not the mind. You are not the body. You are simply the observer of whatever your mind and body does. That's why whenever you get into the spiritual sphere, you hear people talk about be still and know that I am God. Be the stillness, because your true nature is not doing, is not, I gotta pick up the kids after work, there's soccer practice later at 5. It's the observer of the soccer practice and all those deadlines. You see now? So when you realize that reality is not what it seems, this should actually be the gospel. This should be great news. So how do you use this to attract your specific person? Well, if you're God, God can do anything, right? But you're probably wondering, well, if I'm God, how come I don't have the money that I want? How come I don't have the love that I want? Well, that leads me to the next segue. The results that you see right now are not based off of your human form lacking in an area of physical attractiveness or in status or in popularity. Unlike what other red pill communities have been teaching you in pickup artistry and what you've been reading on Pinterest, all of that is, if there is any truth to any of those things, it's simply because you created the reality where you have to follow those rules. But look at all these other people walking around who are ugly as shit, and yet they have the girl of their dreams. Have you ever seen those couples where you're like, you know, there's a really hot woman and then you see her plus one and you're like, what the fuck is that? Somebody explain that to me. Okay, no, it's not always because that guy is rich, because a lot of times we see these homeless meth addicts who are pulling hot chicks willy-nilly, and you wonder, why the fuck hasn't that lady left him? It's because he created the reality where he doesn't have to follow all those red pill rules. Okay? Even if there's one person that you've seen in your life who has broken the rule, that is more than enough proof to debunk the truth behind if you have to follow these rules or not. A lot of people think that you have to do all these things to get love and to get an attractive woman, but that is not the case for everybody, because everybody has their own reality. So step out of the reality where you make it more difficult for yourself. Okay? So what you have to understand is, if you are not getting the love that you want or the specific people that you want, it is because at one point, at one time or another in the past, you had an assumption where you're not good enough. Or maybe specifically of that person, you might have said, well, yeah, maybe in the next couple of weeks when we're next to each other in the library, I can shoot my shot, but she's probably going to say no. Or you might not even have those conscious thoughts. You might not ever have heard the voice in your head say that you're unworthy of love. But all it takes is one little event to happen. And if you react to it and you respond to it and feel bad about it, maybe somebody in your past when you were younger, maybe in middle school, rejected you. Maybe you overheard somebody say that you were ugly. And all because of that, now you see it as Bible, right? That is all it takes for you to get the reflection in your reality of rejection. Like I heard, I think it was Zachary Hickory say, it's not rejection, it's reflection. So what I'm saying here right now is whether it's the circumstances of you struggling with love, or whether it's that every single time that you pass on the highway, you keep seeing a billboard of an elephant. Whatever you see in your reality, whether it's circumstances or physical billboards, it is a reflection of your past assumptions. I mean, speaking of billboards, like, I can't tell you how many times I just have a thought about, like one time I was just remembering an old coworker that I haven't seen in years. And a few weeks or maybe even a couple of months later, he shows up out of nowhere at my job. And it was wonderful to see him. And I was happy because, I haven't seen him in more than, I think, close to a decade. And, now that I know what I know, I realize, man, all I had to do was remember the guy and boom, he pops up out of nowhere. Or it's the same way with your specific person. It's the same way with manifesting wealth. Okay? So when you can tap into your God state, you will realize that there is a reality where your specific person is worshiping you, where you don't even have to hope that she answers her text messages or worrying about getting her number. There's a reality where she's begging to get your attention, where it's the other way around. And she's hoping that you will say yes, that you won't reject her. So how do you tap into that reality? Well, it's the same way that you've manifested these current circumstances that you have. You simply have to change your assumptions. So I have a format where I like to look at it as identity and then affirmations plus visuals, etc., etc., etc. But if I had to choose between all that, which is the most important, I would have to say identity. When you realize that you are God and that you've been manifesting on autopilot without sats, without visual techniques where you have to, get in a yoga stance and put candles in a pentagram. You have been saying on your way to work every single day that, your boss is going to, give you gripe, and then boom. Next thing you know, your boss is looking at your every move and criticizing you for every little thing. It's not because you suck at your job. It's not because your boss is an asshole. It's because you assumed it to be true. Well, you want to get to the point where all you have to do is assume it to be true once, that your specific person worships you and that you guys are in the relationship of your dreams, and it just manifests. But I know shit is not that easy. So for you guys who are still wanting to get your first big manifestation, I would suggest that because you have been living in the identity of rejection and lack, then you want to create yourself into the entity that has what you want. So, specific person, let's say it's a girl at the gym, okay? The easiest way to change your identity to that in my experience, is to literally say, don't just say, I am in a relationship with Sally. Say, I am the guy who is in a relationship with Sally. Because think of it like this. Have you ever seen a movie where maybe there's an antagonist and they haven't shown his face yet, and then when they finally, maybe the FBI finds like an image, while they were doing investigation, and then they say, wait, that's the guy? I saw him at the supermarket the other day. That's him? There's like this feeling of, climactic relief, where it's like, okay, now we know, right? This is him. This is the one who we've been chasing the whole time. Or like when they take the mask off of the villain and you realize, okay, so this is what he looks like. You're not really caring so much about if he had a mustache or, how many pimples he has. You accept it as, okay, this is the guy. This is the one who we've been looking at. I remember there was a movie, Phone Booth, with Colin Farrell, where he's been fucking harassed by this guy, a sniper who's telling him to do all these things, and that if he doesn't follow orders, he's going to snipe him from the phone booth. And then at the very end of the movie, after all that shit that we had to go through, all this thrill and suspense, we see who the guy is, and it's just this, rando with, I think it was Kiefer Sutherland, the guy from 24. But I mean, he wasn't like this, amazing, entity. He was just a guy in, khakis and almost that looked like a lab khaki coat, and glasses, right? You didn't care so much about, I thought he was going to have a fucking dragon tattoo on his ear. No, I mean, you were just like, okay, that's him. Okay, it makes sense. Well, become him. Become whatever outcome you want. Become, that's the guy who is in a relationship with Sally, right? You don't want to be the guy watching over who, got rejected and Sally is with, Jeremy over there. No, you don't want to be the guy on the outside looking in. You want to be the guy who's in that relationship. So simply say, I am the guy who Sally is in a relationship with. Okay? Just imagine somebody, a good visualization for identity is imagine somebody, one of their friends or one of your friends saying, oh my gosh, did you hear that, Billy is with Sally now? That's what she's dating. Yeah, Billy, isn't that great? Just think of it like that, where people are promoting you now as you're the new item, right? So that is how I would handle identity. And it's crazy. I used to just say I'm in a relationship, or I, have this amount of money, or yada, yada, yada. But when I simply change it to I am the person, I am the guy, it was like night and day. I literally remember when I first started changing the affirmation to that. There was a girl who I used to work with, and when I started using this technique, I literally would say, I am the guy that she cannot stop looking at. And the next day, she went from, always being focused on her work and being one of those, goody two-shoes, to I caught her looking at me like 5 fucking times. And this was the first time that I remember her ever giving me what they like to call choosing signals. Just from saying that I am the guy that she always cannot stop looking at, right? So it might work only for a few people, but what I've personally noticed from myself and from other clients is that just from simply changing the wording of your affirmations can make a big difference. And the best way to know if it's the right wording is what gives you the feeling of actually having it, where you're like, okay, yeah, I like the sound of that. Kind of like when they were making the name of the Beatles. It's like, no, it's not the Beat Bugs. No, it's not the heebie-jeebies. The Beatles, yeah, that sounds good. Whatever clicks, whatever makes it register, do that. But I personally think that you should not just say I am in a relationship. I am the guy in the relationship. Okay? So next, this is kind of similar to this, but again, this is more talking about the actual activity or talking more in specific of what it is that you want. Affirmations. So you've already gotten the identity of the desired goal, but you want to still use weaponry. You still want to fill yourself with thoughts, because your whole life you were filling your thoughts with, oh, this person's going to reject me. Oh, my boss is, going to yell at me. And I have this big test on Saturday. I can just imagine what my parents are going to say when I get a fucking 50. You want to do the same thing that you used to do with negative shit, but with this positive shit, right? So put yourself on the pedestal. I am the most attractive guy in every room that I walk in. Whenever I step foot, whether it's in a restaurant or at work, they always lay the red carpet for me. Shit like this, right? This is what Eric would call concept of self. What I showed you previously is basically self-concept, what a lot of these creators talk about, self-concept. This is about concept of self, how you see your body, your human form in everyday life. Okay, so in general, the best affirmations are when you praise yourself and put yourself as an idol, put yourself on the pedestal. And then if you want to say affirmations about your SP, don't just say that SP loves me and that we are texting every single day. If you want to use one of texting, say my SP Sally is texting me so fucking much that it frustrates T-Mobile's traffic and it shuts down their 5G mobile towers. Something crazy like that. One of the ones that I use on this girl who I used to work with, dude, call HR. Dude, I work fucking 70 hours a week, so I mean, what are you gonna do, right? There was a girl who, when I just got into law of assumption, I tried this and I wanted to use her almost like an experiment. And she would never talk to me, bro. Never. And I just started saying, like, when we would work in the same station, obviously not to her or out loud, but I would say in my mind, she brings 5 pairs of panties every single day because she has to keep going to the bathroom, relieving herself for me. And within weeks, after saying that crazy as fuck affirmation, she started doing this crazy stuff on Instagram where she would follow me and unfollow me or excuse me, not follow me. She would block me even when we were not fucking following each other, man. I was already starting to live rent free in her head, right? And then she would start making these weird ass excuses to talk to me at work, even when she would interrupt me having conversations with other coworkers. It's like, who the fuck's talking to you, bitch? Long story short, we ended up making out several damn times in the storage room. We were basically fucking make-out buddies, man. Okay, and hey, thank God HR didn't know, right? But sue me. But the point is because I noticed that I would always talk shit about myself, I realized that the more ridiculous you make these affirmations, the better, right? Because again, it's like, if someone was to make a love letter to somebody, you would not just want to say, I love you, you're my wife, you're amazing. No, she would say, come on, baby, do better than that. You are the flower and I am the sun. Living with you is like being on the clouds of the heavens, like be Shakespearean of it if you have to, right? Whatever works for you. But the point is, don't just make it SP loves me and I'm in the relationship that I've always wanted. I mean, you could, right? But I would say leave the neutrality for your identity, right? Because like I said, you've identified yourself as lonely, as not having money, right? So all you got to do is shift to the identity of having the desired outcome. But you've had all these thoughts, all these negative self-inner talks and inner dialogues on your way to work saying that shit was not going to work out, and you would even fucking visualize it and almost hear your boss yelling at you, right? Well, that's why affirmations are so important, because you're basically replacing You know, I just got my filter done at the oil change. They're putting a new filter in, right? And that's what these affirmations are. They're a new set of thoughts. Okay? So make your affirmations as ridiculous as fucking possible. And lastly, before this turns into a fucking Avengers Infinity War, visualizations. Okay? Now again, I personally think that affirmations, if you were to pick one technique, bro, that you would do, like Eric says, I would say affirmations are better. But here's the thing, man. You get an image in your brain when you're doing these affirmations either ways, especially the crazy ones, right? I mean, when I would say that, you know, I'm just going to make up a name. Barbara was taking 5 pairs of panties to work every day to relieve herself. I would see like an image of the bathroom door, right? I would not actually see her doing the deed. I would just simply know, okay, for some reason when I have that thought, I see just the door. Nobody is watching the movie in your head but you. So who gives a fuck either ways, right? Whenever you say affirmations, there's an image that pops up. So just use that one. If you're one of those guys that has to visualize, that has to do sats, I don't know why I'm talking like Donald Trump now. When you feel like you have to do something, first of all, you're making it more difficult on yourself. But the only reason why I even do visualizations is because it's fun, right? But I actually do try to make them more virtual reality-esque, you know. But again, this whole thing of like you have to have the act 1 and act 2 and you have to script. Like all of a sudden you motherfuckers are screenplays, right? You guys are screenwriters. You know, all these people say you have to do the beginning, middle, and end, and you gotta, you know, make sure that she has her lines by Tuesday, and hire David Fincher for the cinematography. Look, the more difficult that you make it, the more difficult it's gonna be to manifest this shit. Okay, like I said, just focus more on affirmations and see what image pops up, right? And if you are one of those who wants to get, you know, intimate or whatever, don't focus on the beginning, middle, of the end. You know, I know a lot of you guys say that, you know, like remote seduction, like Eric talks about, where, you know, you have to you can all do that, right? And I would suggest you becoming a member on his channel, because that remote seduction is definitely powerful. But again, it's not needed to get her seeing you as a sex icon. It's not necessary. That's just more of when you're waiting in, and I don't even like that term either, but when you don't see it materialize in the 3D reality, that is a way where you can actually experience it for yourself, right? But again, I don't want you guys to think that you have to do these things, because a lot of you guys watch videos like this and you say, well, this guy said I, you know, was supposed to put a chicken hat on in order to, you know, manifest my 6-piece. No. All you have to do is identify and say, I am the guy who has my gym crush, the guy who she cannot stop obsessing over, and then just fill your mind with the most craziest, most narcissistic comments possible about your desired outcome, but most importantly about yourself, and see what image pops up if you really want visualizations. Now, if you guys really want the best type of visual experience, like I said, Eric, in my opinion, is, and of course, if you guys don't know who that is, Eric from the YouTube channel, The Power of I Am, he, out of all the creators, is the one that has the best visual techniques out there, right? I'm not going to be one who just sponsors myself. There's not one manifestation coach out there that you need to listen to. I'm not going to be like these red pill nerds who says that, you know, their way is the only way. No, I love Eric. I love Zachary Hickory. I love Neville Goddard. I love Abdul. I love all these guys. There's not one wrong answer. You ultimately are the answer. So look at what you need. But if you want great visual techniques, I would suggest Eric. So that's it for me. Okay, again, this has already turned into Avengers Endgame. I am Neil Larthos. This is all that the I Am Awareness had to say. And I know you're going to be okay.